Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to be taking a look at how to be successful in APUSH. This is just a short little guide on how to make your wildest dreams come true. So, just a few things that I think that as a student you should be focused on in order to make sure you're successful on at this course. So I'm going to try to make that as simple as I can and really focus on some of the big things that you need to keep in your mind as you're going through the course. The first one is the most obvious, but also the one that's fundamental that none of the rest of them I don't think will matter much if you don't actually read the material. Okay. You're gonna be assigned chapters to read. You're gonna be assigned articles to read in this course. You're gonna be assigned, primary sources, secondary sources, whatever it may be. You need to make sure that you take the time to read those things. Again, there's a lot of information. I think APUSH is probably the most information dense of the AP courses. So you're gonna have to take your time and really read through that material. The next thing is you're gonna have to take notes over that material. I've talked in other videos about what that can look like and what those specific notes look like. But in order to comprehend and take in all the material that is covered in American history in the AP course, you're going to have to take notes and interact with those notes throughout the course. And by that I mean you read it, you take down some notes, you outline the most important information. Then the next day in class, as it's talked about, you reference those notes, you highlight those key points, you add addendums to what you've previously taken. And then, throughout the week, you look back over those notes and you remind yourself of what's been covered before you move on to the next chapters. Another important part of the course, especially the way that this particular course is set up, is to make sure that you collaborate with classmates. Again, this is part of it being college level work. When you go into a university campus, you're going to see a lot of students that are there grouped up in a library or huddled up studying together. And I think it's important that you meet with your classmates and talk about what's being discussed in class. Try to understand why those things are important. Go over it with each other. After you get a test back, what did you miss? Okay, so why was that the right answer? As you're studying as the class goes on, say, well, I remember that we've been asked about this a lot, so we probably need to make sure that we know this. Compare notes. You have this in your notes. I don't have it in mine. Maybe I should add it in there. Why did you write it in your notes? Those are great discussions that help you prepare as the class moves on. One of the things that um, study tips that I've seen a lot of success with from students is to make flashcards over the key terms. I mean, and that sounds really basic, but it's really helpful, especially to understand terms, events, people, place, or things that are very close. You might have to memorize all these generals from the Civil War or something like that. There's not a lot of difference. There might not be a lot of difference between their names even. That really helps you get those key terms down. I think it's a great starting point, especially with a chapter you're struggling with or having a difficult time keeping things clear in certain chapters. I think that's a great way to do it. I think that's it's a very good way to have that base knowledge down for the chapters. It's a good starting point. So this is something that always I know is frustrating for students. And as a teacher, I don't want students to go through this as I would like for students to not go through this if at all possible. And that is, you're studying, you've got your notes out, you've got your book out, and you're reading, and then 2 hours go by, and you don't feel like you necessarily got any better, or the information stuck in your head, or it was a worthwhile study session. So at all possible, I want to avoid that. If you guys put in the time to study, I want to make sure that you're studying effectively. I know you do too, right? You don't want to spend 3 hours one night and still bomb the test. You want to spend 3 hours and really understand the material much better than you did going in. That's a really frustrating feeling. So I would encourage you to strategically study. And by that, what I mean is I just went over some basic things about a study guide. About flashcards and about notes and how to study with those notes and how to study with a group of your peers. I think that you need to be very specific in that you're going to study in a very strategic way, that you're going to, I encourage you to make an agenda, meaning like what nights you're going to study. Okay, what nights are you going to study? And I would pick that based on what times work best for you. I mean, if Sunday afternoons or this just blank period in your week, and you know that you're going to have an opening there that won't be interrupted, maybe every Sunday afternoon you set aside 2 hours and you study for the materials that have been covered that week. Maybe you're an early riser. Maybe it's a breakfast thing. You get up with a cup of coffee, and at 6:30, on Tuesday and Thursdays, you're going to get up and you're really going to study. Um, but find a time that works for you. You need to limit distractions. Find a place that you'll be able to study and not be distracted a lot. Make sure that if you like listening to music while you study, that's fine. But you probably don't want the TV on. If you think that friends are going to be coming over, or there's going to be this issue there, don't try not to put yourself in those positions where you're going to be distracted. And at the end of the day, you're just going to have to hold yourself accountable when it comes to strategic studying. You can't allow yourself to sit back and not utilize your time well. I mean, you're going to have to make sure that whether you're in band or on the basketball team and you're on a bus, if that means you got to put your headphones in and go up there and sit by the coaches and say, guys, I am studying on the way home, then you're going to have to do that. And I know, especially for people that are involved in a lot of different activities, you might have to do things like that. If you have a job, you might have to come home late at night and say, look, I'm going to have to study from 10 to 11. I mean, would I prefer you not have to study that late at night? Absolutely. But some of you guys with your schedules, that might be the way that you have to do it. But at the end of the day, you've got to hold yourself accountable that you're going to make time to do it and that you are going to study in an effective way. And lastly, and I mean, this is the least fun part of it, right? At some point, you need to do this as an individual. And I mean, I talked about group study sessions earlier, and I think they can be good for some things, but there is no way to replace just you looking over your flashcards, looking over your notes, watching the review videos from the chapters, going back, quizzing yourself, looking at the sample questions from the book, and just really studying it. When you miss one and when you don't understand something, going back and going over it again and again and again till you get it, and just really toughing through the things that you might have a hard time understanding. So I think that you absolutely have to be willing to plan that out and to sit down with the material in that way and really look at it and say, look, I don't understand this very well. I'm gonna have to read it again. Or, I took notes, but I didn't take enough notes. I'm gonna have to read back over this and write some more of the stuff down to help me remember it. Or I'm just gonna work with these flashcards so I get every one of these terms. So I can memorize every single one of them. That is the way to make sure that information is there in your head. You're gonna have to do that at some point. you know, I would also encourage you not to wait to the last minute to study. That with your plan, it's not like the day before the test, I'm going to study. I would encourage you to break it up into multiple days. And then the night before the test is more of a review of what you have been studying rather than trying to study 4 or 5 chapters in one night. This is the culmination. This is bringing it all together. This is looking back over everything that you've covered. Because as you know, you get there to the end, the final day, you feel overwhelmed, and then it's just this rush, and then it's not there. You just run out of time. So to sum everything up, read and take good notes. No replacement for reading. I think it is very beneficial, which is the reason that most of this class is set up where you're working in groups in the class setting. I think it's very helpful to talk to someone else who's reading the same thing you are and saying, what did you get from this? Is this what you thought was most important? This is what I wrote down. Is that what you wrote down? Why did you write that down? Or I didn't understand this. Can you explain this to me? I think it's very, very helpful. Flashcards, I think, are a great way to make sure that you understand the basic concepts of a chapter and those terms are there in your head. I think that you have to have a strategic plan. Again, I hate it when I know that a student has studied for hours and they still don't do well. That's you don't want to be that person. You want to be someone who knows, who feels confident that when I sit down to study this week, I've got a plan. I know what I'm going to do, and I'm going to come away with this more prepared for the test. And then lastly, at some point, you just need to sit down with the information and really hold yourself accountable for what do I know, what do I don't know, and what can I do to retain this information. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you have a successful year in AP US History.